A great many people suffer. Much of that suffering is due not to hunger or poverty, but rather stems from ignorance of the spirit world and its influence on both our psyche and spirit. If more people would focus on their spiritual development, from strengthening their connection with God, to attuning their spiritual senses, to working on separating themselves from evil and growing toward goodness, spiritual health would naturally be more widespread. A greater sense of brotherhood then could and would develop even between peoples who may currently consider one another as enemies. It is painful to see the suffering of those who are constantly tormented by evil spirits. We are often unable to detect the origin of their suffering because we are ignorant and unaware of the effect spiritual influence has upon human behavior. Voodoo, for example, is a viable means which can be and indeed is used for destructive purposes. The person who places a curse upon a particular individual or sticks pins in a dolmen to represent him attracts evil spiritual beings, who could inflict real harm. But the victim is definitely affected, in mental, physical, and spiritual ways. On the other hand, prayers of intercession, whether for an individual or a group, can do a great deal to attract the assistance of good spiritual forces and ward off evil spirits. How do we effectively stop the behavior of people involved in terrorism, or such groups as the Ku Klux Klan? How do we stop the condemnation of others, and even that which we place upon ourselves? Inferiority and superiority complexes can begird the human psyche and spirit. Yet if man is not taught to recognize them or cannot understand what causes them, he will be unable to stop them. If a standard of love and brotherhood of personal ethics would be more commonly used, a great many more people would be truly healthy. Because many people are unsure of the parameters of a spiritually healthy parent-child relationship, though, they find it hard to be a good example. When love is withheld between partners and within families, mental anguish and spiritual suffering might result. A child who is the victim of divorce is often denied the love and security that should normally be provided by his parents. But one direct consequence of the fall is that we suffer from lack of love in many of our relationships. And we ourselves often deprive people of love. Thus, we need to become more perceptive, discerning what effect our words and actions have on another person, and use that as the measure by which to terminate their suffering rather than extend it. And we need to understand how to develop ourselves spiritually together with God, our parent, understanding the reality and spiritual root of evil in the world in which we live, the origin of sin, evil and Satan. We also need to understand personally how to avoid being negatively influenced in thoughts, emotions and actions by this reality, and even how to defend ourselves from whatever possessions the evil spiritual world may try to make us live. The psychology of suffering, mental, physical, and even spiritual, can and should be analyzed. Furthermore, we must connect our findings to the nature of sin. Unless we overcome our tendency to sin, and instead restore our relationship to God through perfecting our heart and love, any analysis will remain purely hypothetical projection. Using a purely humanistic viewpoint, without an understanding of biblical keys, fallen man cannot understand all he should in terms of the nature of suffering, depression and evil way to live.